That was chapter 21, sorry. There was a 3-year famine, which then we said was because of the whole story of Shaul. He hadn't been buried or eulogized properly, and because the Jewish people had harmed the Gibeonites and they had a grievance against the Jewish people, there was a 3-year famine. And that was one reason why God was angry. And now, there's another reason. I mean, some story that happened afterwards. It's clear this story happened afterwards. It's right written after. But when in David's life it happened, we still don't know. Because all of these last 4 chapters, 21, 22, 23, and 24, are just the end of the book because there's nowhere else to put them. They're not actually part of the storyline. They're just stories that happened during his reign. One is there was a famine, one is there's another story, one is about the song that David composed during his whole life, which is Psalm 18. One is the chapter we just learned now about his 37 warriors who are different stories and not related to any part of the story. It's all placed at the end of the book, so we don't actually know which part of David's life this story happened. We might be able to work it out, but you can't actually tell from its position that it happened at the end of its life. No, it doesn't prove that at all. Okay? So it doesn't say why God was angry. I think we're going to have to work it out from the story in the chapter. It just says God was angry. Why? We don't know. But Yosef says David, and he actually incited David as if he was already angry with them, but he felt that, and he needs to punish the people, but he has to have an excuse. Even though he really was already angry, so obviously there's any excuse, but it could be that sometimes we don't know. If God would punish us and we don't know what we're doing wrong, then there would really be no point. It'll be like create a chilul Hashem. We're doing nothing wrong and get punished. That's not fair.
He's like giving a reminder why.
Well, yes, or he's giving an excuse of why we can get what we deserve because, well, you did that, right? Although you actually are doing something much worse, which is the reason why he incited you to do this wrong in the first place. So from the outside, we don't know when God is inciting us to do something. It's as if we had no choice to do this Aveira because God's incited us. But the truth is that we're actually being punished for something else. But it's like a cover-up so that we won't have any... God, why are you doing this with big tzaddikim? What do you mean big tzaddikim about this? Now the truth is, God says, I know that you didn't really have much choice about this thing. So I'm not really punishing for this thing, but I'm actually punishing for this thing you don't even know you were doing wrong. But that way it justifies it.
The world's not fair.
Yes, but it has to look fair. That's the point. God wants to make it look fair. It is fair in a sense because God's fair because you really were doing something wrong. But it's not good enough to be fair. It has to look fair. Otherwise, if it doesn't look fair, then it creates a chilul Hashem. People say, "What we're doing wrong?" Right? So theoretically, if you'd ask God that, we said, "You don't know what you're doing wrong. You're doing this, this, and this, and this." But if you don't know that, then I don't gain much by punishing you because you don't realize you're doing something wrong. So God's inciting us to do something wrong, and then that will be an excuse to give us punishment for what we're actually doing wrong in any case. I think that's the way to read it. Because it says God was angry. He was angry. What for? It doesn't say.
Why doesn't he just punish us for the things that we did wrong?
Because we don't know we're doing it wrong. So there'll be no point. We won't get our message. So let's see. That's what it looks like. In the end, we will get a message. Now, Yosef asked David, so he incited David, Bohem, which means against the people, Leimar as follows. God got this strange idea in his head to do as follows. Lech, go, Menei es Yisrael, count the Jews, Ve'es Yehuda, and the tribe of Yehuda, which for some reason or other split. It's a funny concept. We know later on in history there's a kingdom, the southern kingdom called Yehuda, and the northern kingdom called Yisrael. But there's been no split yet. So even 100 years before the split, or even 200 years before, the Jews were still counted separately. Yehuda was always seen as a separate tribe, because they were the royal tribe. The tribe that Yaakov Avinu had predicted royalty would come from. So they were the warrior tribe. They were seen as a separate group. So David got this strange idea in his head to go and count the Jewish people, which is prohibited, right, by Jewish law. And he's going to do it.
It's prohibited to count Jewish people?
Correct. Right? It says at the beginning of Parshas Ki Sisa, if you want to count the Jewish people, then you must do it as follows. Each person will give half a shekel, and then you'll count half the shekels. That's what it says at the beginning of Ki Sisa. Then you'll know how many people there are.
That's a really good loophole.
Right? I mean, it says that in the Torah. Ki Sisa, when you want to count the Jewish people, each one should give half a shekel. And it says, if you don't do it that way, then there will be a plague. Now why? You can discuss, right?
In modern times, if you were like a counselor at a camp, a Jewish camp, you have to constantly counting the kids.
So the custom amongst Jewish people is to go, Shiur es hamecho varech es nefasech or menachem adon. Well, you want to count a minyan, right? That way, that's a puzzle that's got 10 words in it, and I'm not counting the people. I'm just saying a puzzle. Your Shiur es Hamecha, that's the way it's done. Do you have to do it that
Count
way?
shirts.
Well, there's another way.
Do they do that in summer camps and stuff like that? Like Orthodox summer camps?
Usually they do.
Not one, not two, not three.
So I don't exactly know the halachic rules of this thing, of what exactly you're allowed to or not allowed to exactly allowed to do. It could be only over a certain age it's prohibited. It could be only if you do all the Jewish people. Lots of details about it. That's the custom, right? I don't know if that custom would help in the real case. We find examples. Shaul wanted to count his army. What did he do? It says he used sheep. Every soldier take a sheep. I've got an enormous pen over here, hundreds of thousands of sheep. Each one should take one, right? And put it in the other pen, right? And we'll count how many in there, but not how many soldiers there are. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. But David didn't do it. God did it. Crazy idea until he said to count the Jewish people. Now, it looks like God just incited him to do this. It wasn't like God said it was a real choice. But once you've done this, God says if you count the Jewish people, then you can expect that there should be terrible consequences. But the real reason was for something else. But let's go through the story and we'll try and make it better. So this is what the king said. He said to Yoav, who was Yoav? Sarachayil, who was the officer of the army. That was Yoav's job. Asher Ito, who was with him. Shut. Shut means to spread out. Usually used in the sense of swimming. But it means to spread out. No, please spread out. B'chol shivtei Yisrael, amongst all the tribes of Israel. Midan, from Dan, which is in the north. V'ad Beersheba, into Beersheba, which is the south. I want you to send messages around the whole. This was an army census. If it was just a normal civilian census, you wouldn't have used the head of the army, right? So he really wants to know how many people are of army age, right? Maybe because he wants to.
It's like a military census.
Right, he wants a military census. He wants to know how many soldiers he's got. Right? This could be in the light of the fact that there'd been a rebellion. So he wants to make, up till now, the Malbim explains, up till now there'd been no proper conscription. And now he wants to know that when people, what their ages are, when they'll be 20, they're conscripted to the army. He's making a whole proper official census. That's why the army is involved. Upikdu esa'am, and count the people. V'yodati, so that I should know, es mispara'am, the number of people. Mispar, the number of the people. Yoav knows this is forbidden by Jewish law. Yoav said to the king, God should add, Yosef to add, the Lord your God to the people, Kohaim like they, the Kohaim and like they. It means he's giving a blessing. You should have 100 times more Jews, but don't count them. Right? Why? Right? So he said, 100 times. I give you a bracha that God should increase the number of Jews that you have in your kingdom 100-fold. And the eyes of my master, the king, should see it. You should live to see it. This phenomenal increase in the number of Jewish people in your kingdom. This is why I bless you. But my master, the king, why do you want this thing? It means, why do you want to count them? You have to know you've got a lot. God should give you a bracha. You should have lots and lots more Jews, but why do you want to count them? It's forbidden by Jewish law. They didn't say those words, right? Speak to the king. But why would you want to do such a strange non-Jewish thing against the halacha? And the king was stronger than the words of Moab. The king insisted, right? It could be put forward some type of halachic argument that no, it's true, but this is the exception. This is for the army. It's not a civilian census. The Torah doesn't forbid an army. Maybe he had some sort of excuse. That means he became stronger in his argument to the king. The al sarei hachayil, and over the officers of the army. It means they all supported Yoav in his claim. On the other hand, they were conscripted to make this count, this census. But David's opinion swayed the day. David says that it did it. I don't know if that's a justification just because the king tells you to do it. If he's clearly a violation of halacha, they should have gone to the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin said, no, don't do what the king tells you to do. But they didn't. Okay. So Yoav went out, the Sarei HaChayil, and the officers of the army, Lifnei HaMelech, in front of the king, means they departed from the king's presence, Lifkod et ha'am Yisrael, to count the Jewish people. So they're now about to do what the Torah considers a sin. Okay? To count the Jewish people.
So if the king is commanding Yoav to go and do this consensus,
Mhm.
would Yoav be the one who did the sin, or the king?
That's a good question. I sort of tried to talk that out. What I said, what should he have done?
Yeah.
right? He should have gone to ask the rabbi, right? Should I listen to the king? I imagine if he'd gone to do the right thing, which would have gone to the Sanhedrin, who are responsible to decide what the halacha is, what the Torah's opinion of things is, and they would have said, no, you're not supposed to listen to the king. And he would have gone back to the king and said, I'm sorry, I can't listen to this because it's a violation of Torah law. And the king would then have decided what he wanted to do with Yoav, right? Don't forget, Yoav wasn't scared of the king, right? Yoav has killed 3 of them, right? He's killed Abner against the king's instructions. He's killed Amasa against the king's instructions. He's killed Avshalom clearly against the king's instructions. So Yoav isn't scared of the king, right? So the right thing to do would have been to do that. So now, if he doesn't do that, you could say he's also what to blame. I mean, it could be lots of people to blame, and not even them. But in the end, don't forget, I don't think we're trying to blame. God's looking for an excuse. The blame is something else entirely. He says God's angry with the people. He's already angry with the people. We just didn't know. So now it is really just an excuse to count them, and then whatever they deserve, they're going to get. I don't think, if you look at that section in the Torah, Kisisa, it says, don't count the Jews so there won't be a plague.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to mean that if you count them, they're deserving of a plague. Like,
Where's the whole thing about not counting Jews come from?
From the Torah, Kisisa. You got Chumash here, right? Parshas Kisisa, which is towards the end of the Chumash Shemais. When you count the Jews, you shall use a half a shekel in order that there will not be a plague. So you understand why? Why does God send a plague? So I think the answer is, it doesn't mean that. I'll give you an idea. Someone once said to me, right, that the reason for the Holocaust, this is getting on the Holocaust, right? It's because Jews talked in synagogue, in shul. And that's why Sephardim who don't talk in shul, that's why they suffered much, much less, almost none. A little bit. Greece and whatever, but, right? So now, I once mentioned this in class, and one of the students said, wow, that's like so hard to believe. And he took a slightly different approach on it, which I later saw someone wrote a whole article on this. But it doesn't mean that. God's got his reasons for things. But if we valued prayer, then the prayer would have protected us from it. Because prayer is real. So even if you're deserving of God's anger, if you pray properly, then it will save you. But if prayer is meaningless to you, then your prayer for God's saving doesn't save you, and then you get whatever's coming to you in any case. It's not. It is a terrible thing to talk, but the reason why it's so terrible to talk in shul, because Shaul HaNavi says it's a terrible thing, is because then you have no protection. Because your prayers are meaningless. Get it? So that could be the idea as well. Somehow or other, the Jews being united, and not each one's individual. That's just what counting does, right? Counting means you're one and you're two. Now, individuality is important as well, right? But not at the expense of the unity between Jewish people. So that's one of the reasons why we say count a half a shekel. Because even when I stress your individuality, you at least appreciate you're only a half. You still, to get your completion, you need the other half, like the half a shekel to be a whole shekel needs. So it's trying to get the balance between individuality and unity. And that's the problem of counting. Now, if we're united, then we're protected from any other bad things that are meant to be coming our way. Right? Like we find in the life of, later on, we'll learn in the times of Achav, where the people were pagans, terrible, but because they're united, they used to win in battle. Whereas in times of King David, because the people were not united, they would die in battle. Not saying lose, but there were casualties in battle. So the point I'm trying to make is that even if we're deserving of God's anger, which clearly the time of Achav and the pagans Jews were, because they were united, they were protected. So that's, I think, the problem over here. Since they're being counted, not that that's such a bad avera to deserve this, but they're deserving it for some other reason, which we don't know yet what it is. We'll find out all in good time if we get a chance to get to the end of the chapter. What they were doing wrong, why God was upset with them. But their unity protected them. And now David is pointing out their individuality by counting each one separately. That's problematic. So they're not getting it for this, they're getting it for something else, but now this is within the rules allows it to happen. That's the idea. Okay, so what did they do? And they crossed over the Jordan. Vayachanu, and they camped Be'aro'er, which is a town in the eastern side of the Jordan, was actually mentioned in last week. Yesterday we were there in the reading. It's the most southeastern town of the land of the Jews conquered on the eastern side, Aro'er. Yamin, Ha'ir, that's right of the city, which is weird. What does right mean? unless you know which way you're facing. Which way you're facing. So you have to assume that the Tanakh is always assuming you're facing east. Okay? Now, if you had a map, you would assume that the north is at the top, south is at the bottom, so therefore the right would be east. Okay? And the Jewish map is not assuming that. Always, the assuming is you're facing east, in which case right would be south. South. That's, by the way, the name Benjamin. Benjamin. Why is he called Benjamin?
Yamin.
Yamin, because he was the son of the right. Why was he the son of the right?
He was struggles on the southern part.
Because of that?
No, because his favorite wife.
Why does that make it right? And why Yosef wasn't called Benjamin? No, Yosef was also the son. No, because he was the only son of one
Born in Israel.
Very good. He was the only one born in the south. All the others were born in the north, which is in Iraq, where Yaakov was with his sons, and then he moved to the land of Israel, which is south, which is considered your right if you're facing east. So he was the only one born in the land of Israel, which is called the right. Get it? So that's why he's called Benjamin. So that's the assumption over here. So it probably means, when it says Yamin, it means south of the town. That's where they started. They started south of Aroer, and that's where they started their journey. Where are we? Okay. They crossed over the Jordan. Yeah, and they camped. This is the camp where they started their census. In Aroer, Yamin Ha'ir, which is right of the city, which means south of the city, Asher B'toch HaNachal, which is inside the valley. Means the city is probably slightly higher than the valley, otherwise it will get washed every time there's a rain. Okay? You don't actually put a city in the valley, not a good idea, right? Okay, so they're on the side, which means here they're slightly north of the valley. They started their census south of the city, actually in the valley itself. Gad, they went to the tribe of Gad, which is in that area. Eliezer, no, Gad is more north. Eliezer, which is another town there. They came to Gilad. Eretz Tachtim Chodshi. Remember the place? Something new, underneath new. Donna, they came to Don. Ya'an, the Saviv, El Tzidon, they came all the way around to Tzidon, which means they've gone all the way the eastern side of the Jordan. And they turned around, means they then turned left. Sorry, they went west to the Mediterranean. They've done like they've gone all the way up the east side of the Jordan. They've crossed Sivov, means that point where they turned. They've gone to Sidon, which is a Lebanese town on the Mediterranean. So they've done that shape of what we call a Dalet. And what do they do now? Then they came to the fortress of Tsor, which is what we call today Tyre, which is a bit more south of Sidon. Sidon is well into Lebanon. Tsor is just near the border. And all the Hivite towns, Kanani and the Canaanites. Now, I don't know if the Hivi and Canaanites still live there. It's just the ancient names of these towns. I imagine the Jews live. We're not doing a census of Goyim. We're doing a census of Jews in David's kingdom. They're still called the towns of the Hivites. You know, just like you went to the Indian Pueblos, right, whatever. That's just where the Indians used to live, and now there's populated by other people. Yetsu, and they eventually came out, El Negev Yehuda, south of Yehuda, Be'er-Shav, and Be'er-Shav. They've gone all the way down. They started in Yerushalayim, went across the Jordan, went up, went across, and then down the coast, and they come back to Yerushalayim. So they finished off in Be'er-Sheva, in this box, they went across the whole land. They didn't just go around the outside of the box, because you're not going to get census if you do that. That's the basic pattern they went. And they came, means they came back, Tishim Chodashim, at the end of 9 months. This took them 9 months to do this journey. The Esrim Yom and 20 days, Yerushalayim came back to Yerushalayim. So after 9 months and 20 days, they returned back to Yerushalayim. Yoav gave as Mispar, the number, Mifkad Ha'am, of the counting of the people, El HaMelech, to the king. Altogether, Vatihi Yisrael, the number of Jews were Shmaina Meyos Elef Ish Chayil Sholev Cherev, 800,000 men of the army, sword drawers. And which we're not including women, we're not including children, we're not including people who are too old for the army.
Archers?
No, I suppose that just means that you went basic training. After that you had specializing, you had archers and slingshots and all sorts of things, right? But the basic training was you could draw a sword and you could fight. Sholef means to draw, cherev, a sword. And so it's clear this was a military census, which may be why David felt it was okay. Maybe, right? because it's just working out the army. The Ish Yehuda, that's only in men not of Yehuda. The Ish Yehuda, the men of Yehuda, Chamesh, Meis, 500,000, which is an enormous proportion. I mean, it's 2/3. I mean, it's a third of altogether. There's 12,000. There's 1,200,000, right? And Yehuda is more than a quarter. Okay, 800,000. No, it's 1,300,000, right?
It's almost
and
half.
He's almost half, right? Just from one tribe. Okay.
Yes.
They were always in the desert. They were also the biggest tribe, right? Some tribes had 20,000. They had 74,000. So it looks like that their numbers remain much bigger. Unless it's just there were more people ready to fight. But I don't know if you could just get out of the army. No, we're doing a census to find out how many people are of army age or have gone basic training. Or they're at the age where they should be able to draw the sword. I don't know exactly what David's done of it. And the heart of David struck him, meaning now he had regret. His heart struck him means, why did I do this? Why am I counting the Jews? Isn't that fair to count Jews? So David now regrets what he's done. Acharei came, Soferes Am. Afterwards, after counting the people, his heart hit him. And David said to God, Chatasi ma'od, I've sinned a lot. Asher asisi, what I did.
Every time that David talks to Hashem, is that during sleep, or is he awake?
I think it means like when we talk to Hashem. Doesn't mean he was prophecy.
I thought the only times that he ever had, they were...
No, why do you think it's prophecy over here? It doesn't say God spoke to him.
Okay,
You can speak to God whenever you want, right?
So David went crazy, like he violated like a clear Jewish law, and it was his heart that put him on the right path again, and not his seichel. It wasn't this reason that put him on the right path. It was his heart, his feelings.
Yeah.
I like that. No, but your seichel can take you very wrong places.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I just like this.
We don't know what it was that took him away in the
reasonable
first place. It just says like Yasser says David, and he incited David to do this. And I the way I read it is he just put this idea into David's head, and David thought he had the choice, and he didn't. So the point is God wants an excuse to punish them for whatever they're doing wrong, which we don't know what it is. And all the people are doing something wrong, because you can see it's not just David who's punished. All the people are going to be punished in a second. So they're all doing something wrong, which we don't know what it is. God puts it in his mind, in his heart, or in his brain, whatever it is, whichever you want to do, right? To count the people. And then David says, why did I do this one? It's crazy. I greatly sinned, I shall see what I did. But Hashem, and now God, Haverna, please pass over. La'avor is to pass. Es avoin avdacha, the sin of your servant. Ki niskalti ma'od. Because I was really silly. A sachal is a fool. I was really foolish. Means I don't know what got into me to do this. This is really stupid. So he's asking God to forgive him for being stupid. Yaakam David Babayke. David got up in the morning. Hashem, and the word of God, Haya El God HaNavi. So, to answer your question here, it looks like that he was asleep because he got up in the morning. It means after speaking to God.
But he usually speaks to God in his bed sheets anyway.
Why? Because that's what you say in the Psalm when you do that. Okay. I don't know if he usually does that. Yeah.
Oh.
Maybe. Could be. He would.
I thought
During the day he's busy.
Spoke to God, went to sleep, and woke up the next day.
Yeah, it could also be. Look, he's busy kinging all day. He's got a lot of things to do. So at night time he's got time to think about it.
Never spoke to God during
No, that's the other way. Again, you go back to the point that God spoke to them. That we don't know, right? That doesn't say God didn't speak to him. God didn't answer him. I'm going on. He sent the prophets.
So God only spoke to people twice in the daytime. Which two different people?
Who, to Moshe and Bilam?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
Or
Otherwise, he could have been spoken in the day, but then they would lose their senses.
Then
Means they would faint or whatever.
He spoke to Shmuel when he was prophesying those people in the circle. Like Shaul, even.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I hear. I don't know what level of prophecy that means. I hear. Yeah. Clearly, there were people who prophesied, but they were all. I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know what that sounds. I don't know what level that is. Yaakam David Babayk, he got up in the morning. Interesting, there's a pay here. See? A pay means we've got a major break. It's a new chapter, even though we're mamish in the middle of a sentence. David got up in the morning, yes, and what? What about it? Udvar Hashem haya el God HaNavi. The word of God had come to God the prophet. It could be it had come the night before, that I don't know. Right? But God woke him in the morning, and in the morning the prophet came to him. Who was he? Jose David. The prophet. Jose means the seer. He was the seer of David. It means he was the one who would regularly convey God's message. Who was he? God. We had him before with the story of Bathsheba. When he sinned with Bathsheba, God came and told him off. No, sorry, that was not Son of Navi. No, the psalm that we say when we go like this. Vayomer David el God.
Yeah.
Tzali ma'od. Niplo bi'ad Hashem u'bi'adam ale poila. Right? Yeah, you know where that comes from? We'll get to it very soon. Right? That line comes from here. Okay, so God, he is David's private prophet. When God, G-D, wants to give him a message, he sends Gad, Gimel Daled, the prophet, to speak to David. Okay, this is what he said. Halayich, go. This is what God's saying to the prophet. V'dibarta, and you will speak. El David. This is what you should say to David. Kayam Hashem, so says the Lord. Shalosh anoichi noitel alecha. 3, I place upon you.
3 what?
Hey, we'll find out.
3, you have a choice of 3 things. Bechar lecha achas mehen. Choose for yourself one of them. Ve'eth aloch, and I'll do it to you. Means I'm annoyed with you, the people. I give you a choice. You can choose which punishment you want.
So it's a trap.
So it's a trap. This is God. He's not trying to trap anyone. Vayavai God el David. So God came to David. Vayagilon, he said to him. Vayomer, and he says, Hatta. He's giving the choice. We didn't know what the choice was, but now the prophet is saying to David, so now we know what these are the choices. Hatta vaylecha sheva shanim ra'av. Would you like to come? Here's a question. Tav vaylecha, come to you. 7 years famine. Ba'am techa in your land. That's one choice. First choice. 7 years of famine. Choice number 1. Choice number 2. Im shloisha chadashim, or 3 months. Nuscha, you're fleeing. Lifnei tzarecha, in front of your enemies. V'hu roitfecha, and he will chase you. Means I give you another possibility that you'll run away, have to flee from your enemies who will chase you for 3 months.
What?
That's the second possibility. Right? V'im heyos, or if you want, it could be as follows. V'im, and if, heyos, being, shloisha yomim, 3 days, dever, of plague. We usually say pestilence, but pestilence means nothing unless you're involved in the 10 plagues. What pestilence means? When animals die. But it means a plague. 3 days of plague. So you got your choice. You can have 7 years of famine. Well, famine's hard to deal with, but you can import food from other countries. You can, right? Some people will survive. Depends how much food you hoard up, right? You can import from. Okay, that's one choice. 3 months of running away from your enemies, and that's dangerous, right? Because the enemies are trying to kill you. They're trying to catch you. They may catch you. May not catch you. Be terrified. Who will be running away? Just David? I don't know. Not just David, is it? It means the army, people, the kingdom. The kingdom is being chased by enemies, right? Or 3 days plague. Plague, everyone's dropped dead in the plague, right? So how many people die in the plague? As long as many people catch the plague. Okay. Ata, now, da, think, means use your seichel, ure'eh, and see, ma ashiv shalchi davar. What should I answer he who sent me? Now, this is the prophet saying to David. The person who sent me is God, right? Think about it. Tell me what to take back to the guy who sent me. I mean to God. What should I answer? It's a funny conversation. Now we get this post that we say before Tachanun. Vayomer David el God. This is what before Ashkenazim say Tachanun. This is the post. David said to God, Tsar li ma'od. This is, I'm under a lot of pressure. Choice. How do I decide that? I have to decide which is the best for me, which is the best for the people, which is more risky. Like, what do you do? How do you make a decision like that? Tsar li ma'od. Tsar means pressure, narrow, right? Pressure, right? It's crazy. How would I say this? And then makes a decision. Nipla na, let us fall, please. B'yad Hashem, in the hands of God. Now, Which of these three things is called in the hand of God? They're all in the hand of God, aren't they? In a sense, obviously God controls everything. But in a certain sense, the first two are not really the hands of God. In a sense, I'm not sure why. Which is, the first one is a famine. Well,
That's pretty God handy.
yes, isn't it? Right? Okay. The second one is the enemy. And the third one is a plague. Right? It's clear from the end that David meant the third one and not the first two. I guess because the first one is a result of crops. There's no rain. Of course, God controls the rain, right? But it's not directly in the hand of God. You'll see in a second. The second one, the enemies. The third one, people just drop dead from a plague. So you and I happen to live in the 21st century. So we know the thing called
Vaccines?
germs.
Antibiotics.
And that's the way you catch a plague, right?
Okay.
But in the ancient world, I don't mean that David was ignorant, right? In the ancient world, no one had the foggiest idea why people caught plague.
They did not have a foggy idea.
Yeah, they just drop dead. And that's why it was so terrifying. You just drop dead, you got a ring of roses, and put a pocket full of roses, a tissue all fall down. Right? That's a nursery rhyme that we learned as kids, which comes from the Black Death.
Yeah.
Right? So, in a sense, right, that was being in the hands of God. It's just God who made people who died, the guys who God had it in for, right? And that's who died. That's what David chose. I'd rather have something which is unexplainable than have some no rain or enemies. But David doesn't explain that the way I said it. David says like this. Why? Ki rabim rachamov. Because great is his mercy.
They're like, oh, you're going to
Means,
be plague.
I'd rather a plague, because at any point God can just go and he'll stop, because he's merciful. If we pray to him and we do tshuva, we give tzedakah, then God will just stop it. Because a plague is easy to stop. Enemy is not easy to stop, because once they're on the warpath, then who's going to stop them? Yes, you and I know that God can stop them if he wants to. He can split the Red Sea as well if he wants to. But generally speaking, God doesn't do that. Once God's put it into somebody's head to do something, and he does it, God doesn't interfere. Generally speaking, can do if he really wants to, but then we'd have to really merit for God to interfere with our enemies. Once he's put it in their head to, why should they suddenly change their mind? Because they look really silly. So if they're going to do it, it will require what we call a big miracle. For to get a big miracle, you have to be deserving of a big miracle. But to stop a plague, you don't need a big miracle to stop a plague. The plagues stop, right? At some point, they always stop, right? No, even a pandemic stops at some point. So at some point they'll stop. No one will be surprised the plague stops. And just we don't know how it came, we don't know how it stopped. So you don't need such a big miracle. Now, if you have a 7-year famine, right? It means there's been no rain for years, right? So again, you're going to need a miracle. Maybe not as big a miracle, right? But suddenly there should be plenty for everyone. Even if it starts to rain now, there isn't enough food to supply all these starving people. Right? The amount that grows in a normal year is to supply an economy that's been working normally. Once you've got a 3-4 year famine, how are you going to bring an end to that? You need a miracle to bring an end to a famine. You need an abundance, like in Egypt. 7 year plenty, 7 year famine. So the first two methods would require big interference on God's behalf, and that we may not deserve.
Would.
And what I mean is an obvious interference on God's behalf.
So since we're now in an era where Hashem doesn't do like miracles like Yetziat Mitzrayim.
I mean, like here or now?
No, here. Like the miracles that God does aren't like Yetziat Mitzrayim scale.
Mhm.
They're more like,
Correct.
Do we believe as Jews that other cultures, God talks to them and they have prophets too?
Yeah, Balaam.
One second. How are those two questions related? You're just using this as an excuse to ask your question. Yes, we had Yoina. Yoina was sent to Nineveh. We don't believe that the other Jews are going to have prophets. The last one was Bilam. And Moshe Rabbeinu prayed in Parshas Ki Sisa that God shouldn't have prophecy on anybody from now on. God said, I want you to show us that you've really forgiven us for the golden calf. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, I show you if you stop. If you just come back to us like you were before, that means it's like a man whose wife commits adultery. He can't find anyone better, so he takes her back. Right? That doesn't mean you've really forgiven her. He'll only show you forgiven her if you really show something extra. You buy her a new house. That will show you've forgiven her for her adultery. You didn't just take her back. So he said, Moshe Rabbeinu said to God, the way you'll show us that you've forgiven us if you don't have any more non-Jewish prophets. Because, okay, no more non-Jewish prophets. So if the Goyim need to hear a message, get it from us. That's a Yaina, the guy from the whale and the big fish, he was sent to Nineveh to tell them.
But there was no Jews at that time yet. Am I wrong?
At what time?
Jonah and the whale.
First temple period. Sure it was. On the contrary, they were about to come and destroy the Jews in the land, which is why Yonah didn't want to go. Yonah didn't want them to do tshuva, because then God would use them to destroy the first temple. That's why Yonah didn't want. That's why he ran away, because he knew prophetically that they would do tshuva
And then destroy the temple.
and then destroy the temple. So he thought that he could be cleverer than
But I
God.
thought he wasn't Jewish.
Who?
Jonah.
Why do you think that?
I thought you just said that.
I didn't say that. No, he was a prophet sent to the Goyim. That's what you asked me. Does God send prophets to the Goyim? I said he doesn't send non-Jewish prophets, he sends Jewish prophets. Yonah was a Jewish boy.
But do we think that there are non-Jewish prophets?
No, exactly. I said
That's
the word Bilam was the last one.
Uh,
What does that have to do with anything?
can
Okay.
would the 7 years of famine also break the Torah? Because
Breaks the Torah.
the 6th year we were meant to have enough crop for 3 years.
Shemitah.
Yes, if you're deserving it. Correct. In a sense, yes.
You can't work the land.
Yeah.
Right, but also,
It didn't happen yet.
His idea was to fall into God's hands as opposed to fall into human hands, right?
Correct.
Like, couldn't you have also done that by choosing the famine? Like, agreed to that?
That's what I'm trying to answer. I'm trying at length to answer that question. That's exactly a very, very good question. I'm trying to answer. The point of falling into God's hands as opposed to human hands, what's the difference? What do you care? If you're good, you're good. If you're bad, you're bad. If you're deserving it, God will help you. What's the one? Everything is God. The answer is like this. Within God's world, right, there is certain things where God's more involved. What I mean is God's clearly involved. When God does a miracle, he's clearly involved. Generally speaking, God doesn't do that. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, God doesn't like to do miracles because it takes people's free will away. Generally speaking, that's why God avoids it. Okay, so the less miraculous it can be, the better it is. Which would mean it's easier to get God to do that. If you're deserving, if you're a big tzaddik and you're deserving a big miracle, then you may even get God to do something she wouldn't normally do. But to get God to do a small miracle, you don't need to be such a big tzaddik. A small tzaddik can get God to do a small miracle. Only a big tzaddik, I mean a person who's really deserving of it, will get God to do a big miracle. So, at the moment we're deserving of punishment. And David's thinking to himself, okay, if we do grade 1 teshuvah, then God will do a small miracle for him. What will a small miracle? To stop the plague. It's a small miracle to stop the plague because it isn't clearly the hand of God when a plague stops. Just like a plague coming, it comes and goes. That's what happens. Whereas to stop an enemy attacking, everyone will say, these guys were ready, they built up their forces, ready to fight, and they suddenly stopped. Like, how do you explain that? Oh, it must be the hand of God. Oh, if it must be the hand of God, so then God will want to do that. The same is true with the famine. If you've already had, if the famine doesn't come, it will be nothing. But if you're in the middle of a drought, and all of a sudden there's a tremendous blessing, like you've got no explanation for that, again you're seeing, maybe not as great, you're also seeing the hand of God. So David is trying to avoid any scenario which would, to get out of it, would need a clear hand of God to do. And the best one of God is the one that's really just the hand of God, which is, to the whole world, it looks like nature. Right? So that people can get food, that's purely the hand of God because there's only nature involved. So it's easy come, easy go. God will stop that even though we may not have done proper tshuva. We'll have to do something because we're deserving of punishment. But we won't necessarily have to do such a strong form of tshuva. Okay? Alright. So what did he do? Vayitein Hashem Ubayad Adam Ale, let me not fall into the hands of man. Vayitein Hashem Dever Yisrael. So God sent a plague in Israel. Mehaboike, from the morning, it wasn't even 3 days. God was merciful, didn't do it 3 days. But ad Aish Moyed, until the time of the Moyed. Now the Moyed just means something fixed. There was no fixed time. It can't mean for 3 days. Because you wouldn't say from the morning until a fixed time. That's weird.
Right.
Because you can't say from the morning for 3 days. The morning sounds like you're saying from the morning till a certain time in the day. You're giving it a time period within a day. From the morning until the afternoon. Right? Otherwise you say the morning for 3 days. So Chazal say the Mayeg means the time of the morning sacrifice, because that's the thing that has a fixed time, which is at sunrise. The morning. So it was from the morning till sunrise. When's the morning? Dawn. So this plague lasted for an hour and a quarter, 72 minutes it lasted. That's the 72 minutes. That's all it lasted. Right? It lasted from the morning till the time of the sacrifice. Now that's actually an indication that sacrifice has got something to do with this story. Because
So the sacrifice.
the sacrifice has got something. Well, yes, something. This story got something. God was giving that message by stopping the plague at the time of the sacrifice. Let's carry on. In that time, which is only 72 minutes, they died from the people Midon, from the north. In Don is the north. Ad Beersheba to Beersheba in the south. Shivim Elef ish. Sheva's the name of the town. Shivim Elef ish. 70,000 people. 70,000 people died of plague in 72 minutes. Okay? That's 1,000 every minute, approximately.
77,000? Shiva Shavim?
Oh, no, it was 1,300,000.
What's Shiva
No,
Shavim?
but without Judah. 'cause
No, it doesn't say Judah wasn't included. Beersheba is in the south of Judah.
Oh, okay.
Is it 77,000?
No. The town's called Beersheba.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Shivim Elef ish. Vayishlach Yodoi HaMelech Yerushalayim, and the angel, presumably means the angel of death, who's doing this, sent out his hand Yerushalayim over Jerusalem, l'shachasa, to destroy it. I mean, Pasuk 15 just summarized it. Of the whole period was 70,000 died in that period between dawn and sunrise, right? But now let's go into detail of how it actually came to an end. The angel was about to destroy Yerushalayim. Vayinochem Hashem al hara, and God had second thoughts about the evil, whatever that means about God. Okay. Vayomer, and he said lamalach hamashchis. We'll see why God's had second thoughts. Just change his mind. Vayomer lamalach hamashchis, and he said to the malach who's destroying. Now we know he's a destroying angel. Ba'am in the people. Rav, enough. Rav means not a rabbi. Rav means harbeh, a lot. Means you've done enough. Ata, now, heref yodecha, withdraw your hand. But we don't know what happened to make God second man. We don't know. Just talking to stop. Umalach Hashem, the angel of God, which presumably was this angel who was destroying. I'm not sure if it's the same angel, because it's called Malach Hashem. Haya, where was he? Im goyren ha'aravna hayavusi, at the granary of a fellow called Aravna, and he was a Jebusite. Jebusite were a Canaanite people who originally were inhabitants of the land of Israel, and he lived in Yerushalayim. Canaan, for some reason, he was allowed to live there. Okay, we'll see. He lived there, and the angel was there. This angel that's been told by God to stop. Yeah, God had told the angel to go.
He was protecting this Canaanite.
Maybe you'll have to see. No, I don't think that's what he was doing.
Oh.
Vayomer David el Hashem. And David said to God, Bir'osa as HaMelech, when he saw the angel, Hamakeh ba'am. I mean, did David actually physically say, oh, maybe that's what it says. Okay? How you want to understand it, right? But he saw the effects of the angel for sure, right? He saw the people dying. And when he saw this, Hamakeh ba'am, who's striking the people, Vayomer, he says, Hine, behold, Anochi chatasi, I sinned. It was me. Va'anochi avisi, and it's I who were guilty. Ve'ele sign, and this sheep, referring to his people, the sheep that he looks after, Me'asu, what did they do? And the truth is, that's only from David's perspective, that he thinks the only thing they did was the fact they counted them. And that's true. So David says, why God got it in for the people? What have they done? I was the one who did it. But the truth is, that's not really the real take on it, because God was angry with the people before they counted them. Right? Tehi na yodcha bi. Please let your hand be against me. If you're gonna, why are you killing them? Kill me, kill my family. I didn't realize that, a plague means a plague against the people. What did they do?
So the excuse didn't work, because the excuse for that, like, they need some point of connection that they can refer to. We did that wrong, so that's why we're getting punished. But
well, no, like I said, no.
thing.
Yeah, but once you count people, then that's a reason for other things too. They can say, look, we know God says when you count them, that's a reason to be plagued. Then you have to investigate and find out what you do wrong. The truth is, you'll see. They learn what they're doing wrong in a second from here. So what happened? So David says, please, your hand should be against me, your base Avi, and against my family, not against the Jewish people. So immediately, as soon as David prays for God to help him, he gets the answer. What's the answer? God, that's the prophet, came to David on that day. He said to him, Ale, go up, Hakem Lashem, established to God, or set up to God, Mizbeach, an altar. Begoiren Aravna Hayevusi, in the granary of Aravna the Jebusite. I want you to build an altar there. And that will stop the plague, and you'll find out from there what you were doing wrong. So what did you do? David went up. Kitva God, like the word of God, Kashetziva Hashem, like God Hashem had commanded him. He was on his way up the mountain, to Aravna. Vayashkef Aravna looked down. And he saw HaMelech, he saw the king, Vesavadav, and his servants, over Malav, coming towards him. He was shocked. What's the king coming to me for? Vayetza Aravna, and Aravna went out. Vayishtachu, and he prostrated himself, HaMelech, to the king, Apov, with his face outside to the ground. Why did my master the king come El Avdo, to his servant, referring to himself? So he wasn't Jewish, but he still accepted the king's authority as his king. He was a Jebusite. David said, Liknois me imcha, I've come to buy from you. Es Hagoren, the granary. I want to buy your granary. Why? Livnois, to build Mizbeach Hashem, an altar to God. The Te'atzar HaMagefa. Te'atzar means it should stop. Right? The plague, Me'alaham, for the people. I know that if I build an altar, this will take away the plague.
What Magefa is plague?
Magefa is a plague.
Yeah, plague.
It was a plague. So now we know the whole story. Because it says it continued until the time of bringing the sacrifice. It wasn't just a time, it wasn't just 72 minutes. Because as soon as David prayed the first thing in the morning, and he got a message from the prophet to go and build an altar, he immediately went up there. He goes and buys this thing from Aravna. He goes and brings a sacrifice there, first thing in the morning, and that brought a stop to the plague. But the message that's being given to the people is that God's upset. They haven't taken it upon themselves. It doesn't bother them that there's no temple. That's their problem. That's what I think was the message. They were living in a b'di'eved. What b'di'eved?
Where they put the sacrifice then?
So they did. There was a place to bring sacrifice. You could bring. There was a tabernacle, right? But they already had a kingdom. They already had a king. They're already at peace. Why doesn't it bother you that there's no temple?
I thought he said that they couldn't. They weren't able to.
Go on. What's your question? Who said they weren't able
I thought
to?
Hashem said that they would be able
Because
to.
we didn't have the ark.
Beautiful question. I don't really know the answer. We learned earlier that King David had wanted to build the temple, and the prophet came and told him you can't do it. So, I think there's two ways out of your. It's a brilliant question, right? So why's God anointed them?
Right.
Now, it could be this story happened beforehand. Could be. We said that all these 4 chapters, the end of Shmuel, are not happening now, right? They're happening sometime in David's reign. So it could be that God's not going to let them build it. But why doesn't it bother you? Right? Why is nobody working up, making a temple fund? You've got an ark in a tent. You've got the Mishkan in Nov, and everything's like b'di'eved. It's like a husband and wife live in a caravan for 50 years. Yeah, you can live like that, but you can live in a hammock, right? You're going to buy a hammock for your wife. You may meet her that way, right? But you're not going to live with 2 hammocks, right? Just not. You can bring up a fan like that theoretically, but it's just not a way to live. And God's on the same thing. The Mishkan is not the way it's supposed to be. The ark here, the Mishkan there. It's supposed to be based on Mikdash. Why doesn't it bother anybody that we don't have this proper relationship? The Jewish people and God are supposed to have a proper husband and wife relationship. This is not the way to do it. It doesn't bother anybody. Now, when you'll ask me, I'll tell you it's not time to do it. That could be, right? But no, it doesn't bother anybody.
You're not taking any initiative at all.
Right. Well, it could be that even after David had been told he couldn't do it, it was still this still didn't bother.
It sounds very funny.
Just a minute. Just a minute. It didn't. The people didn't know that David had been refused. We know because we have the Book of Shmuel. Why doesn't it bother anybody else? That could be why David didn't suffer from this whole story directly. Yeah, it's true David was the one who counted the people, and that brought the plague on the people. But that wasn't really the problem. The problem was that they weren't interested. They didn't care. David wanted a temple. David built a temple fund. That was all of his own initiative. The people themselves were doing nothing. They were quite happy with this second situation. That's what I think is the take
How
on
do
the
we know?
story.
How do we know?
That makes sense.
How do we know?
How do we know that people didn't know that wasn't allowed?
I don't know. I don't say I know that people don't know. I just have no reason to think they didn't know. We have the book. They didn't have the book. So how would they have known about this private conversation between David and Nosson, who came and told him you can't do it? Was it? David publicized it. The king, God doesn't let me build a temple. It's not unreasonable to suggest, that's all, that the people didn't know, and therefore that's why God's annoyed with them. You know nothing about my conversation with David. And maybe if they'd wanted to, God would have said, okay, if the people really want to, I'll let you do it. That could also be, right? It could be that was the reason why God didn't let David do it, because the people are not up to it. And when they'll want to do it, then we'll talk seriously. Okay, Eli, you think this is very feminine?
Yes, it's like
Well, first of all, why is
it's
that
like
big
a
deal?
woman complaining at her husband that he's not foreseeing things on
Okay.
her mind. It's
Okay.
like, I'm doing everything you're asking for.
Yeah, but so you make it as if the women are bad. No, women are right. The husbands claim that they're doing everything they ask for, but they're supposed to foresee exactly what it's supposed to be. A husband is meant to understand his wife. Look, when you're newly married, then you can't be to blame. But if you've been married for 50, 60 years, the Jewish people have had a relationship with God for 400 years already. Don't they know that they're supposed to be building a temple? Doesn't it say in the Chumash you're supposed to build a temple? It's not like they couldn't have worked this out. That's the thing. David also wanted to build a temple. But the people, you don't care about your relationship with God. That's what I'm saying. It's like, you want to live in a caravan your whole life? That's the way you love your wife? Don't you? No, I'm fine with this. Yeah, you're fine with this. This is what you thought our relationship was going to look like, because you like caravans and you like camping. That's what you thought I was intending to live like that. Just because we met in a tent. No, I want to bring up a family in a normal, proper relationship. That's the base of Mikdash with a permanent building, permanent structure. That's the marriage between God and the Jewish people. Okay, we got to do a few more psukim, so we don't have to read so much, and the seal. So, so he says, why is the king coming? El David, Yikach, no problem. The king wants to buy, you can buy. Vayal Adoni HaMelech Hatov Be'inav. So then the king will be able to offer up, I think, what it means. Vayal, to bring up. The king will then buy it and you'll offer up whatever you want, whatever's good in your eyes. Re'ei, Habakam, hey, in my cattle you can use them la'oila. I don't know if the king even brought animals with him, because he didn't know if Aravna would sell it to him. He didn't know. But Aravna says, no problem. Here you can use my cattle. Re'ei, see, Habakah, the cattle la'oila will be a burnt sacrifice. Amorigim, they are the things that you use to, like a plow. Ukli habaka, and the other utensils of the cattle are eitzim for the firewood. It means once you're going to use my cattle as an altar, I don't need the plow and all these other utensils. You use that as a firewood. Look, there's an urgency over here. There's a plague. Aravna probably knows about the plague as well, and we want to get things as quick as possible. Hakol nosan Aravna HaMelech LaMelech. This is weird. Aravna here is called a king. Aravna was a king.
It's generosity.
Maybe. He's showing like Elvis is the king, right? Depends what the king of what, right? No, maybe he really was a king. But he wasn't the king of Israel. Maybe he was a... Sorry, right?
He was the king of rock and roll.
Right. So he was the king of the Jebusites. He was a goy, this guy, right? A Jebusite Givusi. And they still... Where was his barn? You know where his barn was? The Temple Mount. It's where the future base of Mikdash was built. And that's why God said, go and buy. Why couldn't David build an ark? Build an altar wherever you want. Build it in your backyard. Build it everywhere. Why can't you buy it? Because Aravna lived on the Temple Mount. That was his house. And his barn was the Temple Mount. Right? Well, it wasn't the Temple Mount. It was just the farm, right? And that's where he lived. And God wanted David to build an altar there, which is where the base of Mikdash is meant to
Much
be.
significance there.
I went to the Temple Mount today, by the way.
Really?
In the morning on a tour, yeah.
Wow.
It was,
So
a
you
free,
weren't wearing
it
your
was
shoes.
a free walking tour. You don't give him $25. It was very cool. I started praying. a little
Free
bit.
walking tour?
Only if you give $25.
Free.
It's like you can do a bar mitzvah on the Aish roof. If you give 50,000 shekels of donation to Aish, you can do a bar mitzvah.
No, my point is you guys can all do it for free. It's a suggested donation.
Yeah.
But you're not allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. But anyway, so I pray anyway. I'm sort of shuffling and a security guard asked me to stop.
Yes, the WAC don't like it. Yeah.
First time in my life.
You have to be very careful where you go on the Temple Mount, because there's all sorts of shaky opinions over whether you're allowed to or you're not allowed to go.
There was a frum group. They down in the corner.
Okay.
Because we have a good idea of the places you can go.
You guys should go
I
every
don't
day.
take risk just based on a good idea. To me,
Good.
I highly recommend
we-
it. Have you been there?
Can we
Rabbi?
do
Why
one
not?
more line?
Why not?
Or-
yeah.
Rabbi, why don't you buy them?
Because I
Rabbi
believe
Shines,
it's a
no,
bit risky.
Rabbi has done that. Yeah.
I called Nasan Rav HaMelech, so he's called the king. Lama, I gave it to the king. Vayomer Rav HaMelech, Hashem Elokecha, the Lord your God, Yirtzecha, will want you, desire you. Means I'm sure he's blessing him that your actions should be ritzui. Means it's set favorable. That's the word, favorable in the eyes of God. And this will atone for the Jewish people. You've shown that you're sort of laying the foundations of the temple, and the people should take this more seriously. That the temple is something, and we're starting.
This is the first step.
And maybe David then desires to build up. Maybe he's already been desired. Maybe he built his fund. But maybe he got into the people the idea that they should be wanting a temple. The king said to Ravna, "Lie. No what? Because Ravna wanted to give it free. Ravna wanted to give it. David wants to buy it, and Ravna says, "Yikach, the king should just take it." And the king says, "No, I don't want your general. I don't want it free."
Oh, it's like a Abraham.
Very good, very similar to Avram. When Avram wanted to buy a place to bury Sarah, so Ephron said, "Take it. If it was 400,000 shekel between friends, right? It's a big deal." Yeah. Avram says, "I know exactly how much you want for this, right? 400,000 shekels is a lot of money between friends, right?" So he understood. But here he didn't want this is the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount we buy. We don't get the generosity from Goyim. Yeah, the Goy would always say, we gave it to you Jews, even that you didn't buy, right? No, we paid full money for it.
Could there have been like an official Kenyan? Like does that money have to be transferred in order for like a Kenyan to be valid, or like?
Well, no. Usually there's other ways to buy. It depends. Between Jews and a Goy, it's very complicated. Between a Jew and a Goy, I think it has to be half money. Between two Jews, the money can come later as long as you sign a contract.
Alright.
No. Ki but kanoi ekne. I will surely buy my oischa from you. B'mechir means that it's full price. Full price. Obviously you pay price, right? B'mechir means the full price. V'loi a'alel Hashem. I will not offer up to the Lord my God oiloi sacrifices chinam based on freebies. Right? No. I'm going to buy you the place. I'm going to buy you the wood. I'm going to buy the animals. Everything I'm going to pay for. Yiken David is Hagoyren, and David bought the granary, Vesabakar, and the cattle, the Kesef Shkolim Chamishim, for 50 silver shekels.
50 shekels.
Not our shekels. No, to work it out. No. Our shekels is about 80 shekels. Sorry, a silver shekel is about 80 of our shekels. So when the Sephardim have the custom that they give half a shekel before Purim, they give a real half a shekel. Ashkenazim don't do that; just give half a shekel, right? Sephardim more strict, give a real, the value of a real half a
So
shekel.
4,000 shekels.
So it's 40. But interesting, if you look in Divrei HaYomim, it says 12 times the amount. And Chazal say he bought two things. He bought the granary to build for the altar, and he bought the whole area, and he paid a lot more with that for the temple. This was just as an altar. Okay, we're going to finish the last passage of the Siyum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a scene?
The top.
Okay. So, David bought the granary from a Ravna who was a Melech, the Apostle says, who lived there, right? Which tradition has it was what we here call the Temple Mount. And this was where he decided to sacrifice. And this was because the angel had told him that if he wants to bring an end to the plague, which came as a result of him counting the people, then he should bring sacrifice. Which we understood, as Dylan so nicely explained today, that he was getting the Beis HaMikdash ready, right? Just like we do in our actions, getting up to Tisha B'Av. And he paid a lot of money for it because it's only your effort and dedication. It's such a nice idea that Dylan said, right? So that's what he did, and that was showing his dedication to build a temple, and through that encouraging the people, I suppose, also to be keen on doing this, and this would atone for their lack of interest in building the temple. So Vayiven Sham David Mizbeach. So he built there an altar. David built there an altar, La Hashem, right? So you read this Dylan as Ledalet, right? Because in the what it had on the thing, instead of a hey, it had a dalet.
Why was it?
Yeah.
Because that's how some people do it. It doesn't actually mean hey either. It should say Yud K Vav K, which is God's name. In order to avoid writing God's name in full, so most places put a hey.
Yeah.
Some people avoid that because the hey is still one of the letters of God's name. That's why they put a dalet instead, which doesn't have God's name at all.
But it might as well then not put a hey on whatever. Here, Hamaf Gefa.
It's different. Because it's the hey which is from God's name, which remains by taking the other letters out. But the other hays are just regular hays. This is a hay of God's name. That's why you'll see on Chabad when they put a heading when they put a heading as base hay, right? Base, which means Be'ezras Hashem, with God's help. Some people avoid the hay and they put B'siyata Dishmaya, which means with the help of heaven. They've got a dalet instead of a hay. That way, it's less problematic. Anyway, so that's what it says. La Hashem. Even Sham David Mizbeach. Hashem, David built an altar there to Hashem Bayal Oilos, and he offered up burnt sacrifices, ushlamim, and peace sacrifices. Burnt doesn't mean that it's all burnt. It means basically the whole thing goes on the fire. Shlamim means what the people eat as well as some of it going on the altar. Vayei Oser Hashem. That means God was entreated, which means the prayers of King David affected God. That's what it means.
Entreated.
Right. We can affect.
Vaye'etar, well, it looks like he's been affected because what he was doing, he stopped doing. Right? That's what it means. You're right. It's an expression you use when you talk about God. Like you can just get God to change his mind. Yeah, but it doesn't really. The mind doesn't change, but that's the way the actions are described.
Which word's that?
Now, the word vaye'aser, right? So, as an active word, it would be vaye'etar, which means to pray exceedingly. Right? When Yitzchak prays for a child together with his wife, it says vaye'etar Yitzchak l'nocham ishto. Yitzchak prayed exceedingly. So when someone is affected by that prayer, it becomes the passive. Vaye'aser, he was affected by this exceeding prayer. Okay? La'aretz means God was accepted this prayer about the land. And the plague came to a stop. Atzar is a stop sign in Hebrew. So the plague stopped Me'al Yisrael from affecting the Jewish people. And the plague came to a stop, and we said how many people died. 70,000 people died. And that's what we wrote in Pasuk Tezvav, that over the course of this time the plague ran its course, 70,000 people died. And we described how the plague was about to attack Yerushalayim, and David saw this. He prayed to God. God sent the Navi. The Navi said, go to buy the granite from Aravna, you build there a Mizbeach, and that will atone for the Jewish people. Now we put it all together, and we suggested that the sin of the Jewish people, which God was angry was the fact that they hadn't taken an interest in building the temple. Right? Okay. And that's why it really didn't affect David in a direct way. Obviously David was upset that all these people in his kingdom had died. But it didn't directly affect him because he, on the contrary, he had wanted to build the temple. It was the people who weren't showing an interest. Okay? So that brings us to the end of how many chapters?
24.
24 in this book. And how many in the first book? Even more, 30 I think, in the first one. That's a long book called Shmuel. So I thought we would, after saying Chazak, we made a siyum.
Amen.
And please God, we should finish all the 24 books of Tanach. This is one of them. There's another 23 to go, right? Some harder, some easier. We'll continue with Malachim because it's really a continuation of the story.
Yeah.
The storyline continues with Malachim, although I believe it was authored by somebody else. I just printed out the first page just for today. Didn't have a chance to print too much. Okay, HaMelech David.